Hi, and welcome back to Books Yada Yada. I'm Dina, and today's video I'm going to make as short as I possibly can, which if you watched my other two videos, it's really hard for me to do because I talk a lot. But anyway, I'm going to try to keep this brief just because we went through, I live in the Northeast, we just went through Isaiah. It's a storm, so it won't be offended if I get its name wrong. Anyway, so we just went through that. We've been out of power for 3 days now, and we are powered, thank God, because we have a generator. Thank God for generators, but we don't have any Wi-Fi. So I got to find somewhere to go and upload this. Hopefully one of the neighboring libraries is up and running and has Wi-Fi, so hopefully I can get this out there sooner than later. But what I wanted to do today was talk about music and books. And I'm not talking about any music memoirs or biographies or any books about music, but how music affects the way we read sometimes. And I called the video Harmony in My Head just because it's a Buzzcocks song, and I don't know if any of you are old punk rockers like myself, but that was a song by the Buzzcocks. And I'm one of those people who wakes up every morning and I always have a harmony in my head. I always wake up with a song in my head. It's kind of weird. I don't know if there's other people out there. Let me know. Comment down below if you have the same thing going on with your brain. But it doesn't happen every single day, but usually since I can remember. So I kind of, I always have my nightstand journal, and I'll jot down whatever that song is for the day, and it does become sort of an earworm sometimes. I can't get it out. But anyhow, so sometimes when I read, certain songs will pop up. I'll read a passage, and it'll just make me think of a song. So what I wanted to do is make a playlist of all of the songs that go through my head while I'm reading certain books, and that I feel, in my opinion personally, you might be different when you read these books, but some of the songs I feel kind of make almost like a soundtrack to the book. So I thought it was just something different and cool to include. So having said that, we're going to move on to our first book. And we'll go with the glasses. So the first book that we're going to be going over today is called Ink. Now, I don't have the physical book. I got a advanced digital copy from NetGalley. This book is by Paul Mayberry. Now, I've never read anything by him before. I've never heard of him, and I don't know why. Paul Mayberry, where have you been my whole entire life? I love the horror genre, but I have a tough time finding authors that do it for me. I think you know what I mean. Well, this guy did it for me. In his new book, it won't be coming out until November. It's called Ink. And I'm going to, oh crap. Oh. Okay, so I can't pull up a description because I don't have Wi-Fi. So I can't get to the Goodreads description or even my Kindle description of the book, but I'm going to try, so bear with me to summarize this. So we have this town set in a small town. Again, I love that small town trope, right? And it's called Pine Deep, and it's in Pennsylvania. And this town has gone through something years ago called the Trouble. And what I realized when I was reading the book was that he went into it, but he didn't explain it completely. And then what I realized after I was done with the book is that it's part of a trilogy of books called the Pine Deep Trilogy. So, Dina, hello. You would have known if you'd read the other 3 books, but I didn't know anything about them. So I read the 4th book, and it worked really well as a standalone novel. I mean, I read it and loved it, and, there were a few little things that, I kind of went, well, I would have liked a little bit more insight on that, but it was okay because I definitely am going to go back and read the first 3 installments of this trilogy. So this town, Pine Deep, is haunted by some horrible past, something that had come through and has just left it sort of this magnet for creeps, weirdos, anything bizarre they just flock to this town. So our main characters in this book are a Vietnamese tattoo artist named Patty Cakes with a very dark, troubled, haunted past. We have a bounty hunter named Monk Addison who has a lot of baggage, let's just put it that way. And I loved where his storyline went. And then we have the creep, we have the killer, right? And we have his POV, or his point of view rather, from almost the very beginning of the book. So basically the book is about this memory thief who is able to touch a person who has tattoos and absorb their memories, and whatever memories are linked to that tattoo. So in doing this, he is able to get some sick, perverse thrill out of living vicariously through these people's really haunted memories. What I liked about it was that we get insight into the memory thief's, I'm just going to call him that, I believe his name was Owen. Owen has a very, very troubled past, and we kind of, the author doesn't paint a sympathetic, well, maybe it does. He does paint a bit of a sympathetic picture of Owen. So you can kind of understand why he's doing what he's doing, but of course it would be wrong to be like, yay, Owen, you're, stealing people's memories and like getting your kicks off, through these memories. It's kind of weird, right? So that's Owen's story. And he, throughout the book, you find that they're calling him the Lord of the Flies, and I'm not going to give away too much of that because that's kind of an integral little piece of the story. So that was really cool. So I loved all of the characters in this book for the most part. Some of the minor characters definitely, I think, were in the Pine Deep trilogy. So I didn't know too much about them, but I have a feeling that they are featured more adequately in the trilogy. So the other characters, our main protagonists, you really become invested in them. It was a page turner. The other subplots that are going on in this fringe community inside of Pine Deep are, there were some same-sex relationships, which I loved because you don't read a lot about that in horror or even thrillers for that matter. So it made it very interesting. And so, the biggest thing that I loved about this book was that the female characters were awesome. They were so empowered and strong. And again, something that, as a woman, we all like to see and read about. So this book, I would highly recommend. Again, it doesn't come out till November. I'm not going to give away too much, but it is worth reading. It is creepy. I wouldn't call it horror. I would say it's more psychological, paranormal, suspense thriller. That's how I would categorize this. And the most interesting, I think, and here's the useless trivia, right, is that Jonathan Mayberry, and again, I didn't know anything about him. He's been a prolific writer for a really long time. He's written some of the X-Files books, all kinds of different things. So he's been around for a while, and I'm really excited to read more about him. Also, I just love the fact that his last name is Mayberry, because if you're old like me and you know about the Andy Griffith Show, or you watched the reruns when you were a kid, Mayberry is a small town that is just, everything's hunky-dory and everything's apple pie and wonderful, and there's just, a little kid named Opie who's played by a young Ron Howard. So I thought it was kind of ironic or paradoxical. I don't know if I'm using the appropriate terminology for that, but that our Jonathan Mayberry is a horror thriller fiction writer. So it's kind of funny. All right, so moving on to our next book. What I can't even read my own handwriting. It's terrible. It's terrible. Oh, so it's called Untold Mayhem, an assortment of violence. Okay, so you have 24 unique stories, short stories, in this book, and they were all really, really, really well done. Some of them were excellent, some of them were not so great, but they're all unique. They're all completely across the board. And I'm just going to read really quick the description of some of the stories here. So in the book, you'll find 24 compelling stories filled with suspense, horror, and mystery. All of them are truly unique, except one thing they have in common. They are all dark, violent, and disturbing. And yes, they are. Disturbing characters. Uncover the characters with dark secrets. Characters like a tarot card reader who makes house calls. That one was really good. Or an ex-con who can't resist carrying out one last home invasion. There's thrills and twists. Enjoy the unique twists that you won't see coming. And that is true. Some of the stuff you just you're like, ooh, wow. Every bit of each story will keep you on your toes and wanting more. Untold Mayhem awaits you. Sit back and enjoy the show. So that's just a brief little synopsis of what goes on in this book. I loved it. All of the characters were great. I got the Kindle edition to read, and then I listened to it because I got from NetGalley an advanced copy of the audiobook. I was able to listen to it at night when I went to bed, which I like to read creepy stuff before I go to bed. So I did that, and the narration, you have different narrators, a whole slew of different narrators narrating each story, and they all do a great job of it. So my favorite story in this collection by Mark Tullius, I don't think I said his name, and I hope I'm saying it correctly, Mark Tullius, was my favorite story out of the whole collection was a story called News First. And this one was really, really good because it takes place in Providence on the Brown University campus. And, you know, Mark Tullius just does a great job of keeping these stories really short, but you are able to kind of invest in the characters in the story with them being so short. And you feel bad for them, and you sympathize with them, with some of them, and you're grossed out by some of them, and you wonder what happens to them afterwards. So I enjoyed it thoroughly. I would highly suggest it. It's very short. I mean, it's short stories, right? But it's the book itself, the collection itself is under 200 pages. So it's definitely something that you can kind of put down, read a book, pick it up, read a few short stories, and break things up that way. So great job, Mark Tullius. I loved it. I would highly suggest it. If you read it, please comment down below and tell me what you thought of it, what your favorite stories were from this book, okay? So moving on, going to the last book here. I read this in June, and this book was my favorite book that I read in June. It's probably one of my favorite books of the year, honestly. And it's called The Passenger by Lisa Lutz, okay? So I'm going to really quick just read the back because I'm, again, terrible at summarizing things. So premise is, with her husband's corpse still warm at the bottom of the stairs, Tanya Dubois has to go on the run again. When the police figure out that she doesn't officially exist, they start asking questions she can't answer. Desperate to keep the past buried, our heroine hopscotches across the country, adopting and shedding identities. Along the way, she collides with Dominic, a cop with murky motives, and the troubled Blue, a woman who sees through her disguise, and maybe a friend or a foe. But ultimately, when the past can no longer be ignored, Tanya, races home to confront the darkest secret imaginable. In the tradition of Gone Girl and Girl on the Train, on every book, on every thriller, right? Oh well, what are you gonna do? The passenger's scorching pace, unforgettable heroine, and ingenious plot will keep you turning pages deep into the night toward a stunning conclusion that will quite simply blow you away. So that did that for me. I read this in one day. I blew through it. It was so fast paced. It was so well written, and all of the plot twists, all of the different storylines were woven together so well, and you really feel for our main character, for our protagonist, Tanya Dubois, who I cannot give too much away on this one because I don't want to spoil it for you, but she just is constantly living on the edge of her seat because something shady went down years ago, and we don't know what it was, that is keeping her on the run. She goes from Austin to Wyoming to, I think, Ohio to upstate New York, I believe. And along the way, she makes friends and actually, becomes very close to some of these people. And then before you know it, she's got to leave again and has to take off and try to assume a new identity or not. Sometimes she's just completely living off the grid the whole time. But it really takes you down a lot of twists and turns. You don't know who to trust. You don't know who. They're very unpredictable, and you find out at the end what happened to her, why all of these events were set into motion in the first place, and it is worth it. It is definitely worth reading to the very end, because once you find out what happens, it all makes sense, and it's a satisfying end. So I would highly, highly, highly suggest The Passenger by Lisa Lutz. Great book. So as I said before, I'm going to try to go ahead and make a playlist of all the songs that popped into my head while I was reading these books. And side note, Inc. actually gave me this idea, by Jonathan Mayberry, gave me this idea because at the end of his book, he has a playlist called Patty Cake's Playlist, who is our Vietnamese tattoo artist, because her whole world is just about music, and I loved her character. I didn't like her name, Patty Cakes. I thought that was a little cheesy, but anyway. So she loves music, and it's the only thing that kind of gets her out of her haunted past. It gets her out of her darkness. So Jonathan Mayberry created this playlist at the end of the book that is like 4 pages long. And I went, oh my God, this dude knows his music. Like, I was just like completely blown away. I mean, he was naming off people from Leonard Cohen to, I don't know, maybe the Cramps or the Damned. I can't remember, but like, just really all over the place. And so I love an author who knows their music, because to me, when an author or a writer really knows music well, it makes them a better writer. That's just my opinion. But bravo, Jonathan Mayberry, for that playlist idea. So I'm going to do the same thing and just put those songs down there, and hopefully you'll like that. All right, to the end of this, what's coming up next. Okay, so just stay tuned, because you're just going to get a little shot of the books I'm going to cover in the next video. All right. So I hope you guys are all doing well, especially those of you who got hit by the storm that I'm not going to try to pronounce again. And you're all safe and happy and have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.